Good morning, everyone. I would like to warmly welcome you to this Mind and Life dialogue on power and care. As the Managing Director of Mind and Life Europe, I must say this is a very exciting moment. We're here with 2,000 people and an amazing, distinguished and impressive faculty of speakers, including His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So, Your Holiness, thank you very much, a warm welcome, and thank you for coming here for 3 entire days for this important dialogue. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful and feel very privileged that we all gathered here at this time, at this place. This is the 31st public dialogue with His Holiness Dalai Lama that Mind and Life Institute has organized, the 31st. And this all started out of the vision of His Holiness, together with Francesco Varela, a neuroscientist, and Adam Engel, an entrepreneur. In 1987, they created Mind and Life Institute. This is the second public dialogue we are organizing in Europe, and the first one in Brussels, the capital of Europe, which of course has special significance today. Why do we hold these dialogues? The mission of Mind and Life is to foster an open dialogue between the natural sciences and the sciences of the mind, both modern Western sciences and the Eastern Buddhist sciences of the mind and Buddhist philosophy. This dialogue has already facilitated a totally new field of inquiry called contemplative science. We believe that by researching the workings of our mind, as well as the introspective methods such as meditation, mindfulness, we as humans can learn how to develop positive mental qualities, our full human potential, meaning the qualities that can help us to be happy as individuals and as a collective. And we believe that understanding our mind and developing our potential can help shaping policies and practices for creating genuine societal happiness and well-being, as well as genuine prosperity. In this 3-day-long conference, we will delve deeply into the nature of a human mind, our motivational drivers and tendencies, looking at them from a wide variety of academic and spiritual perspectives. We will see that what we can learn from this examination so that we can contribute to creating a better and more sustainable future for humanity and for life on this planet. Now, I would like to thank each of the presenters, both on the panels and in the workshops, for contributing their time to this event without any fees. We are most grateful to you for supporting us in this way and making this possible. We're also grateful to a large number of volunteers, including Emergence, our agent here in Brussels. In that regard, and in the interest of transparency, let me say a few more words. As we wish our guests that you are well taken care of and benefit fully from this dialogue, hosting such an event does indeed bear significant costs. They include large items like rental of this beautiful hall, and insurances, transportation and airfares, hotel accommodation for presenters, security, the organic food catering, lighting, sound, film, all the technical aspects, and many other things. We do not have all the final bills for this conference, but we expect to break even without any significant profit or loss. Let me also add that we're glad to have been able to offer 250 student tickets at reduced fees, and we also offered over 600 reduced price tickets. And we also donated another 50 student tickets to Peace Jam, which is launching their youth mentoring program this weekend in Brussels. This is in line with our intention to support a younger generation of researchers and scientists. I would also like to point out to the light art on top of us, designed and provided by Oliver Eliasson exclusively for this event. It is powered by the sun and from the roof of Bozar, and it gives us a sense of real sunshine here in this hall. So I hope that all this will help you to have a really enjoyable time here, so that you can really enrich yourself while engaging in this wonderful dialogue and reflection. So thank you very much. And now I'd like to introduce Mr. Pierre Gourdian, the President of the Board of Directors of the Université Libre de Bruxelles, the Free University of Brussels.
Your Holiness, ladies and gentlemen, I stand here today deeply inspired by 4 reasons to be proud by the holding of this conference. I am proud as a citizen of Brussels, wounded city but alive with passion and energy. I stand here proud as a citizen of Belgium, small and complex country but rich of its distinguished history, its pragmatic wisdom, and its exquisite poetry. I am proud as a citizen of Europe, battered, challenged, threatened, but such a noble achievement in the governance of international relations, and so still immensely relevant as a beacon of light in a period of darkness. I am finally proud, just as a person, for the presence here today of so much goodness, so much truth, so much beauty. Your Holiness, among your many qualities, eminent qualities, there is one that I would like to pay particular tribute to this morning. It is your ability to listen. And I would like to use one rare word to describe this quality of listening, and it is the word miraculous. Why miraculous? Because it takes so little, it achieves so much. And I will therefore invite us all, over the next 2 days, to speak less, to listen more. I shall therefore be very brief with my remarks in the few minutes. There is, however, one thought that I want to share with you, and that in my heart and my mind profoundly resonates with the theme of this conference, power and care. I have been privileged over the last 3 decades to be a humble observer, student, supporter, and occasional practitioner of leadership. When I speak about leadership today, I speak in a very broad sense, and I will give the quality of leadership to any man or woman who, in a sincere and authentic way, wants to change the world. Those people are leaders. Over that inquiry into leadership, I have come to distinguish 2 very simple components of leadership that have a profound correspondence to the theme of this conference. The first component is the external one, the outside-in one, the objective confluence of forces and factors that at some point confers to an individual or a group the formal or informal license to exercise authority, conduct influence. That is the domain of power. Then there is the internal part, the inside-out part, the world of the struggle and the beauty of internal forces, the world of a self-examined Socratic life, the world of care, self-care, which necessarily always leads to care for the others. The relationship, ladies and gentlemen, between these two components, the outside one and the internal one, is one of complementarity, richness of points of views. It is actually an interesting interface between these two, as in a house. The window that enables to look from the outside into the inside, or from the inside to the outside. That house has a window. That window can be small, it can be large, it can be stained glass, it can be dark glass, it can be big window, it can be transparent. It is, however, one different type of relationship that I want to leave you with today. And therefore, for that, I would like a very simple thing, to ask you to conjure in your mind one very simple mental image. Think about a dungeon part of one of these wonderful medieval castles that we have in Europe. But do one mental operation on this dungeon. Remove the outer wall so that the internal staircase becomes visible. That staircase has a base, a foundation deeply rooted in reality. It has a platform, and it has a central axis and steps that require energy to climb and that enable to see gradually the same landscape, but with a heightened sense of consciousness, with a greater sense of elevation. I shall put power at the base of this staircase. I shall put care on the platform. I shall say power is the point of departure. I shall not say that care is the point of ending. I shall just say that care, as a result of a journey, ascending journey of personal development, is a platform, a milestone, which enables one to either stay on the platform, to contemplate the landscape, to go back and climb up again, to jump, to fly or to fall, or maybe some mysterious new staircase will appear with different types of steps. That personal journey, Your Holiness, ladies and gentlemen, is not a matter of choice. Choice is when you reach the platform. Care is the world of choice. Power is a matter of departing point, necessary departure point. I say that all of the men and women who, with authenticity and integrity, want to change the world will be necessarily on this journey. They can be on this journey unconsciously, or they can be on this journey consciously. Your Holiness, ladies and gentlemen, I do invite us all to start this journey from power to care. I thank you very much.
So, Your Holiness, we are going to spend 3 days together exploring the relationship between power and care. And so, in our world, we face very urgent and global problems. And to address those, we need the voices of many fields in society, from science, economics, politics, education, status of women, to come together to find a solution to bring a healthy balance between power and care. So that's an absolute need. So throughout the week, we'll have different panels, which we are going to introduce. But just as a general reflection, if we think of the history of humankind, more than 95% of the time we were hunter-gatherers. That means very egalitarian and cooperative, very close together small society, with not much accumulation of goods, not much hierarchy. Then about 12,000 years ago, and we'll know why, because of the change of climate, humans start to settle. They started agriculture, raising cattle, accumulating goods. Then chiefs and hierarchy took place. It's also the time of great prosperity, but also where the phenomena of war began, because before there was individual violence, but no groups going at war against each other. But still, that time the power was very limited. The power to act on the planet, only 5 million human beings on Earth. No big deal. Then the tools they had, they hold on their hands, whether it's a weapon or a tool. Now, with the scientific, technological, industrial revolution, the power has been multiplied million times with steam machine, with electricity, with atomic energy. And this power now is in the hand not of single individuals, but groups and nations. So now for the first time in our history, and Joanne will express us what is the Anthropocene, we enter in an age for the first time human beings have the power to devastate the planet, to cause the extinction of a third of all species on Earth within 50 years or so, and possibly to threaten our own survival. So it is quite clear that we need to match this unprecedented magnitude of power with the equal magnitude of care. Otherwise, this very power that we created may cause our own extinction. So we need to care for our fellow human beings, for 8 million other species of animals, for the Mother Earth and future generations. So that's what we are going to explore through the week. So for the first session, we are going to have the very big picture, going from what happens in animals. We'll speak of chimpanzee politics, empathy and altruism in animals, especially great apes, with Frans de Waal. Then with Sarah Hirdi, we are going to move to how humans, at a unique way, through maternal and paternal care, to care for their offspring and mutually care for each other. Then we'll move all the way to the present and the distant future with Johan Rockstrom, to explore how we could match power and care so that we can continue to live in a sustainable harmony with the environment and other species. So the very big picture. Now, this afternoon, in the second session, we'll move to the perspective of psychology, endocrinology, that's how our hormones works, and neuroscience. We'll explore how various motives sort of influence our behavior, and how those motivational systems can be oriented either toward power or toward caring, and are associated in the brain with various neurotransmitters. We'll see also through neuroplasticity how mental training can help us to enhance altruism and compassion. Then tomorrow, in session 3, we'll consider how the world's major religion and ancient indigenous tradition have dealt with the question of power and care. Sometimes bringing immense good to humanity, sometimes fueling division, conflict, and immense suffering. So that's a major subject which is very, of course, relevant today. In session 4, tomorrow afternoon, we'll see how the voice of care could go along the voice of reason to move to a more caring economics, to reduce inequality in the world, to continue raising the status of women, to protect human rights, and our social and political activism can be a strong tool for peace. Then in the Sunday morning, in the concluding session, we'll try to integrate all this and speak of personal commitment and global responsibility. We'll see how we could face the modern challenges of forced migration, climate change, climate refugees, social injustice, gender inequality. We'll consider the role of art in society. we see how we could move towards new way of organizing governance and working communities. And finally, Tanya Singer will help us to integrate these various aspects so that we can step up our commitment to global responsibility. So this vast theme of power and care came first as the vision of our friend, the neuroscientist Tanya Singer, and then we were very happy to join her in this effort and the whole Mind and Life Europe team. So it's a wonderful, for 3 years we have been preparing this and we are so glad that it comes to fruition today. So now for this morning session, we'll begin with Professor Frans de Waal. He's professor of psychology at Emory University and the director of the Yerkes National Primate Research Centre, also in Emory. So he has published numberless scientific papers and a number also of very well-received books, including Chimpanzee Politics, The Age of Empathy, and recently, Are We Smart Enough to Know How Smart Animals Are? So, Frans, the floor is yours.
Well, good morning, Your Holiness. Or goedemorgen, as we ook hier zeggen. I'm going to talk about animals. I'm probably the only speaker about animals. That's what I assume. And I assume that both power and care have biological basis. I've studied all my life chimpanzees, and so I'm going to say mostly things about chimpanzees, our closest relatives. Is that okay? Is the sound okay?
No.
Yeah. Oh.
Can we bring back the return speakers closer?
I'm trying to move my slides, but they're not moving.
Merci.
Should they be moving? This thing is not working.
Oh. Il y a un problème avec les...
This is not working. No, it's not doing anything. Can you? Yeah. All right. That's a chimpanzee. That's actually a chimpanzee alpha male. And I'm going to say a few things about, first about power, then about care, and then about the combination of power and care. So chimpanzee politics, the reason we call it politics is because it is not automatically the biggest and strongest male who's the dominant. It can be the smallest male, actually, who is the dominant. Because it's all based on coalitions. It's based on, do you have support from the females? Do you have support from other males? Which also means that you need to keep your supporters happy, otherwise they stop supporting you. And so it's really like a political system. It's not, physical strength is important, very important, but it's not the only element that decides. The body language of power is very clear in chimpanzees. So these are two males, two adult males. They're the same size, but one is the dominant male, the one on the left, because he's walking upright, he puts all his hair up, he looks very impressive. And the one on the right is submissive and is grunting to him, types of grunts that he's making, and he's subordinate. So there's a very clear body language of who's dominant and who's subordinate. In humans, the body language is also very clear, usually. So people often forget, because people look at themselves as egalitarian, but humans are not egalitarian at all. Who's the dominant male here? Who's the new fat chief here? So in chimpanzees, we speak of the bipedal swagger, which is how adult males demonstrate their dominance. They walk upright, they put all their hair up. In humans, you have a bipedal swagger also. Yeah. So who's the dominant male here? The body language of power is extremely clear in our species. It's not really that different from in chimpanzees. And basically, if you walk into a room with 25 people, you probably within 30 seconds, you know who's the dominant in that room, sometimes even earlier, because you can clearly see it from the body language. So that's the power part I wanted to show, which I think is very clear in humans and chimpanzees. Now the caring part. I'm very interested myself in empathy, and we recently did studies on empathy in all sorts of species, and consolation behavior. In Dutch you would call it troostgedrag, and I'm going to give you a few examples of it. So empathy, this is a definition from a dictionary, is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. And you immediately see the two components, which is the understanding part, which is a cognitive component, and the feeling part, which is the emotional component. And when we look at animals, we often look mostly at the emotional part, like are they in tune with our emotions, and all mammals are. The reason most of you at home have cats and dogs and not lizards and fish is because you like mammals, you like the emotional contact with mammals. They understand your emotions, you understand their emotions, and that's the empathy part. And recently there's an enormous amount of evidence in all sorts of mammals. We did a vole study. I usually work on primates, but we recently did a vole study, which is a rodent, to look at the neuroscience of empathy. And basically the neuroscience is very similar to the human neuroscience of empathy. Yeah. So we don't do the neuroscience on elephants. It's a bit hard to do, so we do it on other species. So consolation behavior, that's a behavior that we can study, and this is bonobos. We do that at Lola Ya Bonobo, which is a sanctuary near Kinshasa in Africa. And so what you see here is a bonobo on the right who is distressed, who has lost a fight, and the one on the left provides reassurance. So that's what we call consolation behavior, and that is the main expression of empathy in these animals. It's very common in the bonobo and in the chimpanzee also. So I'm going to show you a little video. After this, the video comes up, and the video shows a female on the left, adult female, who bites a baby bonobo, a 3 or 4-year-old bonobo. Bonobos are very slow in their development. And you will see the baby scream, and then you will see what happens after that.
Good. Bandundu just attacked Malala.
So this was very effective. This act of consolation was very effective in stopping the screaming and stopping the distress. And it's a very common behavior in chimpanzees and bonobos. A lot of other animals don't always do that, but a lot of monkeys don't do it. But the apes, they show frequent consolation behavior. And it's an act of empathy. It's also the first studies of human empathy were studies of consolation. The first studies on human children were done where they asked a family member to cry, and then they look at how young children respond to them. And young children, even 2-year-old children, they will walk up to them and touch them and stroke them and provide consolation. And that's an act of empathy in human children. And in human children also, the girls do it more than the boys. There's a universal in mammals sex difference in empathy. Empathy is higher in females than in males. So we study this in this sanctuary, and all of the bonobos in the sanctuary are traumatized orphans. They are victims of the bushmeat trade, and usually as babies they are taken from the market. They are orphans, they are raised by humans, so they have an abnormal upbringing. But we have a few, if you look at this picture, you see a few babies sitting on the back of mothers. So we have a few mother-raised bonobos as well, and I want to say something about that. So this is a sort of graph. There's a few graphs, sorry about that. There's a graph of consolation behavior and the frequency, and what you see is that young bonobos do more of it than adults, because I think the adults become more selective in the sense. that they don't show it to everybody. The young ones do it to almost everybody, but the old ones only to their friends and family and so on. But if you look at the mother-reared bonobos, these are the mother-reared ones. They do far more than everybody else, and we only have juveniles for those. Now, this is something that has been found in humans as well. So there are studies of the Romanian orphanages, and these are traumatized orphans, human orphans, who have a very low level of empathy. They have a very disturbed emotional life. And so in the bonobo, we basically see that same sort of process going on. Now, the last part I want to share with you is something on leadership and the combination of power and care. I think is very important. So we tend to think that the most dominant male in a chimpanzee group must be a bully and take all the benefits and not do very much otherwise, but that's really not how it works. So yes, you do have alpha males who are terrible and who are bullies, and in humans also we have two kinds of leaders. We have dictators and we have good leaders, and I think we have the same thing in chimpanzees. In chimpanzees, a good leader is a leader who keeps the peace. Here you see an alpha male in the back who is standing between two females who are fighting and stopping the fight between them. And so he's standing like this and he stops the fight. And a good alpha male does that very frequently. I'll show you a little video clip of this.
Where there's a fight, Nicky intervenes. That's part of his job as leader.
So alpha males, when they're good leaders, they stop fights, even the smallest fights between two kids. And it's very important, because if you don't stop the fights between kids, the mothers start fighting of the kids. I hear that at daycare centers this is not unusual. So to stop the fights between kids is a very important task, and all the other fights as well. And so a good alpha male is a protector of the weak, and becomes very popular as a result, because the weak are going to support the alpha male as a result of that. The second thing is consolation. If you look at who provides consolation in a group of chimpanzees, we have actually thousands of cases in our chimpanzees. This part of the graph shows you the sex difference, shows that females do more of it than males. So females provide more consolation to distressed individuals. But as you see, I haven't shown the top one. The top one is the top male and the top female. And you see the top male does actually more than anybody else. And so basically, the alpha male is not only keeping the peace in the group, he's also the main provider of consolation for individuals who were in trouble or who got beaten up or whatever happened to them. And that is really sort of surprising, because people always think that alpha males must be ruling by force and terror. And those alpha males do exist, but there's many alpha males who are real leaders. And so that's sort of the summary I want to give you. A popular alpha male is one who needs support and gets support and is supported by the group. Otherwise, he would probably not be alpha male. Who's a peacemaker in chief and who's a consoler in chief. And I want to leave you with that.
Thank you. Your Holiness, before we move to the next speaker, do you have any questions or comments?
Firstly, I very much happy or pleased with our Mind Life meeting in the European continent. Wonderful. And I appreciate all your hard work or preparation. Then the leader of the universities were Tagiti.
The university representative, yeah.
You mentioned Dalai Lama always sort of willing to listen Yes, out of my curiosity, I always listen others' view or some different opinions. But also I love talk. Not only listen. Bala, 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 like that. So I would like to mention the Mind Life is this kind of meeting. Now I think over 30 years. The late Verala, Francisco Verala. Verala, Ashmarwe.
Amy, where are you?
Forget.
Forget.
I always remember your late husband, right? So the reason why is we start this kind of Sarvasade dialogues. My first visit to Europe, 1973. Then I began to realize, the European countries materially highly developed with the help of technology and modern science, really highly developed. But that not necessarily people who enjoy these material sort of facility, not necessarily be happy one. Too much stress and too much sense of competition. That automatically creates jealousy. So then, I began to feel, material development certainly is to provide our physical comfort, not mental comfort. So now, in order to deal with mental level problem, drugs, alcohol, not much, temporary sort of that, temporary relief. Those sort of problems, come from mental level. We have to sort of find within mind how to tackle these things. So, frankly speaking, the ancient Indian sort of knowledge about mind, emotion, is comparatively highly developed. So we Tibetan, since 8th century, we start learning the ancient Indian knowledge, including psychology, these things. So over 1,000 years, we really kept this knowledge through rigorous practice or rigorous study and also some practice. So then I felt, maybe from our sort of ancient sort of knowledge, maybe some contribution, possibility to make some contribution for inner peace, irrespective of whether believer or non-believer. After all, we human beings, physically, emotionally, mentally, same. Now today, 7 billion human beings, all are same. All want happy life. When we say happy life, we should not forget inner peace. So therefore, eventually, you see, we start the mind-life dialogue. So that, as a matter of fact, when I start as a dialogue with modern scientists, some of my friends feel some reservation. They feel science comes from West, so too much close relation with the West, maybe some danger. So initially, some sort of senior monk scholars, also some reservation, and also some, Westerners who follow Buddhism. So, as a matter of fact, one person, warned me, dialogue with scientists is quite a serious matter, so be careful. Science is killer of religion. Then I reflect on Buddha's own word. Buddha is taught to his follower. The follower, my follower of big monks and scholars should not accept my teaching out of faith, out of devotion, but rather thorough investigation and experiment. So I felt there's no problem. Investigation with skepticism is very essential in order to carry investigation. If you believe something fixed there, then no question. Without question, no effort for investigation. Without investigation, you can't find the reality, or you cannot find answer. So then that I feel quite similar. Scientific way of approach, experiment, investigation and experiment. So Buddha's teaching in general, particularly in Nalanda tradition, investigation with unbiased attitude, open mind, it's quite similar. So then, and then also it seems quite clear, the material development alone, no guarantee for happy person, happy family. So then we start with this dialogue. So after 30 years, it is mutual benefit. We, although some sort of ancient Indian sort of literature, including Buddhist literature, is mentioned about particles or atoms or these things also mentioned. But the finding through scientific research is immense help to us. Then also the theory of Big Bang, these and come from 5 elements and dissolve in the space. The essential sort of idea mentioned in some of the Buddhist literature. Everything comes from space and dissolve in space. The sentient being also, when we count 5 elements, one additional factor is consciousness. Otherwise, it's the same. This physical. This is from small particle that we call a space particle, like that. So it's a immense sort of benefit to Buddhist sort of as a student. And the scientist Also, you see, they found very, very useful information about mind, about emotions. That with that, the method to tackle this destructive emotion. So we strictly, follow non-religious approach. Simply try to follow, because according to our common sense and common experience. So that's, I want to share how this movement is developed. So now, in here, in the European continent, as I mentioned earlier, I often used to telling the European continent that in the past many centuries, there was a lot of fighting, a lot of killing. And then 20th century, First World War, Second World War, mainly involved European countries. Then later Japan also joined. Tremendous sort of violence. And according to some historian, over 200 millions of people killed through violence. So I think beginning of this 21st century, the human mentality still feel or some disagreement come. And then the things, images of response from mind as how to solve this by force. Now even religious group, more division. Although all religion teach us the oneness of humanity. According to those theistic religion, all human beings, 7 billion human beings created by God. The non-theistic religion, all are same sentient beings who want peace, who want happiness. So even then, it's now, unfortunately, religion itself also becoming one factor to division, make division and killing unthinkable. So now, because this continent very much involved violence, war, you European people suffer a lot. As a result, you also becoming more mature. So now in the past, war, one of the factors, this violence, is too much emphasis, my nation, their nation. Now the modern Europe is actually created this spirit of European Union. I think wonderful. One time, my late, very close friend, and also I consider my tutor about quantum physics, von Weizsäcker. You see, he once told me that 1990s, at his own age also now around 90. And he mentioned to me when he was young, as a young German, every French eye, German is their enemy. Similarly, German eye, French is their enemy. Now that kind of attitude completely changed. So this, I think, indication of development, progress. So now, the mind life, this movement, is not only pay attention about material value, but also internal value. I think in America, number of people, some institution, some university also, you see now showing, some cities also now showing interest about inner peace through practice of love and compassion. So now in this country, this continent, European Union, you have, I think, a very good basis now. So I am quite sure, you see, you can lead this work in order to bring the happier life with full means material comfort that provides physical comfort and inner peace, inner development, with fuller knowledge about our mind, about our emotion. Then, you see, you will also get inner peace. So physical comfort, mental comfort. So that's my sort of wish, my hope. And then, of course, your explanation, because of championship, yes, in the biological level, wonderful. We are social animals. So, naturally, the love, affection is the major factor to bring together. There's nothing to do with religion. So you see, sometimes you see people consider practice of love, compassion is part of religious practice. So those people who have no interest about religion, they also no interest about love and compassion. That's totally wrong. So your explanation is very good, and particularly female, more sensitive about others' pain. It's wonderful. But then you cannot explain about the human intelligence by Kasade, championship movement. That's difficult.
Well, anything to say?
I'm not going to say anything about that.
So the champion, any animal, you see, no record, animal start war, maybe 100, some fighting, some monkey group because of the monkey and some fighting. But we, in human history, war is part of our history. Why? Physically, our physical not that strong. Tiger, elephant, the chimpanzee also, I think, maybe stronger. At least their hand is, I think, much stronger than our hand. But there is no such sort of intelligence, how to manipulate, how to defeat. And that creates, finally, weapons, finally, nuclear weapon. There's only we human beings can do that, no other animal. So now time comes. In order to tackle these man-made problems, we have to deal our warm-heartedness, and our intelligence should combine with warm-heartedness. Then our intelligence is becoming more constructive. Otherwise, our intelligence also become very easily destructive, combined with anger, hatred. Okay.
You want me to say something?
So that's why.
You want to say something?
Well, I want to say one thing about the European Union. The European Union was formed after World War II as a political pact. It is now an economic pact, but it was intended to bring France and Germany into one pact on the reasoning that if you increase the value of the relationship, that they need each other, you're going to reduce the chance of conflict between them. That was the thinking. And it came partly out of the Benelux, out of Belgium, actually, that kind of idea. And it's very much something that happens in the primates. So I've done all my life studies on reconciliation and peacemaking in primates. And we call that the valuable relationship hypothesis. You can experimentally increase the value of relationships between, let's say, two monkeys. The two monkeys can only get food if they work together. And then you induce conflict, and you notice that they will reconcile much more easily because they depend on each other. So mutual dependence is a very big factor in preventing warfare. And that you can demonstrate that in animals. You don't need religion, you don't need politics necessarily. You can show it in animals. They understand.
How do you use the word? Because the champions in politics also.
Yeah.
But you're using the word politics there.
Politics, yeah. But you don't necessarily need that kind of level thinking, because lots of animals are mutually dependent and attached, and that is a very big mechanism in preventing that kind of aggression. Yeah. So the European Union is based on that principle, basically. And the Brits have sort of misunderstood. And yeah.
So, Your Holiness, it's a perfect transition to move to Professor Sarah Hirdi. She's emeritus professor at the University of California, Davis. She had also many scientific publications and several books, including Mother Nature, and another one called Mother and Others, the evolutionary origin of mutual understanding. So she will speak precisely, as you said, of the transition about intelligence, about care especially, between great apes and humans.
Thank you. Your Holiness, what I'm hoping to discuss today is the transformative power of nurture and how it can help explain how the apes in the line leading to the genus Homo, our line, became even more empathetic, more interested in what others are thinking and feeling than the apes that Franz just told you about. And my question today, Your Holiness, is going to be how we can use what evolutionary anthropologists are learning about human origins in order to encourage the powerful to be more caring. And I want to start with the chimpanzees Franz told you about. And this mother, after she gives birth, will not allow her baby out of touch, out of direct skin-to-skin contact for a single moment of the day or night for the first 4, maybe 6 months. She'll go on suckling that baby for 6 years, and in turn, her infant clings to his mother like his life depended on it, which it does. But among hunter-gatherers still living as our ancestors must have done during the Pleistocene, still living that way and rearing their children as our ancestors did when they were first studied by anthropologists, mothers allow and even encourage others to hold their infant. So this woman here, up there, has just given birth, and she hands her baby to her own mother to massage the baby's scalp, and the other group members gather round waiting for their opportunity to hold and nuzzle the baby. So why these differences? So why so different from chimpanzees? First of all, she trusts those around her to return the baby unharmed, which chimps actually can't do. And secondly, she's aware that the help of others will be absolutely essential for her baby to survive. Now, don't mistake me. Mothers are critically important, no question about that. But this Aka Central African forager baby will spend much of the first day of life being held by females and males other than his mother, allo mothers. And these allo mothers can be older siblings, grandmothers, fathers, aunts, cousins, maybe even another woman, and if she's lactating, she might briefly suckle the baby as well. And importantly, infants who have the most caretakers at the age of 1 are the most likely to still be alive at age 3. And there's no wonder that this is so. No mammal in the world, except maybe some forest elephants, produce offspring that grow up more slowly than humans do or are more costly. Once they're weaned, other apes will provision themselves. But little humans will remain dependent for 15, 20 years, needing supplementary food from others. It takes 13 million calories to raise an infant from birth to when that child is producing as much as he or she consumes. Yet, hunter-gatherer children are going to be weaned earlier. They're costlier, yet they're weaned earlier with shorter intervals between birth, so the mother will be pregnant with or have another baby before that baby is independent. And this becomes an even bigger challenge then for mothers as brains are getting bigger. And so you're moving from the 450 cubic centimeter brain of a chimpanzee or an Australopithecine, doubling in size to about 900 cubic centimeters by 2 million years ago. And brains are among the costliest organs in the body to produce and to maintain. And by the time you get to modern humans, Homo sapiens, us, with 1,350 cubic centimeters of gray matter, very costly brain, you have to ask yourself how this is being supported, financed. Scientists are just learning that the metabolic demand, the cost of these brains, doesn't peak until 4 to 5 years of age, which is after a child would have been weaned. So where is the nutrition for this big brain coming from? And the challenges of sustaining these growing children would have been magnified even more by the unpredictable climates of Pleistocene Africa. And even with more meat in the diet, hunting is a very unreliable way to make a living. And it took several men in order to provide just 40% of the calories needed, and they had to share. They had to pull the meat they were able to get and share the food. Even so, 60% of the calories had to come from more reliably obtained plant foods gathered by women. And a critical portion of these gathered foods were coming from older women, past child-rearing age, not current mothers. And what you see here in this slide is a 62-year-old Hadza woman moving a boulder to get at the starchy tubers buried underneath. And she actually doesn't have children of her own. She's a great aunt. She's getting this food for her sister's children, but also grandmothers are working very hard. And I agree with my colleague, the anthropologist Kristen Hawkes, that the reason that a woman as old as I am, long past menopause, would still be alive is because my ancestresses were helping to care for their younger kin during the Pleistocene. And alloparents then were absolutely essential for our evolution. There's no way on Darwin's earth that humans could have emerged unless mothers had had a lot of help. And And longer postmenopausal survival was just one of the evolutionary implications of humankind's deep history of shared care and shared provisioning. There were also profound implications for mothers who had to be very sensitive to how much care they were likely to have, and also implications for infants who grow up dependent on others, needing to rely on them. And developmental psychologists are learning that whether in other apes, non-human apes, or human apes, babies who are off their mothers spend more time looking into the faces of others and monitoring their eye gaze than do babies that are being held close by their mothers, which little chimpanzee infants mostly would. And furthermore, in humans, by about 6 months of age, you begin to find very attention-getting behaviors like babbling to attract the attention of others. And these others are reinforcing this behavior with kiss feeding and treats. And we know that children with older siblings are better at mentalizing. They have what psychologists call theory of mind by an earlier age. They have improved social skills later on. And even before they can talk, all little humans are very interested in ingratiating themselves with others. And they will spontaneously share, even picking out a piece of food to offer to someone else that is different from their own preference if they think that person is going to like it. It makes them happy to do this. Multiple caretakers is also correlated with enhanced capacities to integrate multiple perspectives from others. And such children are better at taking into account what someone else knows when they try to communicate. So, over the course of development, little children in the Pleistocene who were better at reading minds, who cared more about what others were thinking about them, feeling pride when approved of, shame when disapproved of. Even before babies can talk, they feel pride and shame. And these would have been the children best cared for and best fed, so that over generations, through evolutionary time, so that's over development, and then over evolutionary time, generation after generation after generation, these would have been the youngsters favored by Darwinian selection. So if there were also tremendous implications on their caretakers who were being transformed. Scientists have learned that the reward centers in your orbitofrontal cortex are stimulated when you see a cute baby. This is true for men as well as for women, for alloparents as well as for parents. We see these psychophysiological changes in caring fathers. Prolactin levels, a hormone normally associated with a lactating mother, prolactin levels go up in a caring father, his testosterone goes down. And there are also surges in oxytocin, a neuropeptide we normally associate with giving birth, lactation, and female orgasm. Relevant factors in all these, there's signals of need from the infant, how much childcare experience the man has had, relationship with the mother, genetic relatedness, but the big factor is prolonged, intimate contact with babies. We see similar neuroendocrine responses in alloparents as well as parents. Fathers' brains show many of the same neural responses as mothers do, even if they are adoptive fathers caring for babies. And you also find in these adoptive fathers surges in oxytocin in the primary caretaker. So when my first grandchild was born, I wondered whether a grandmother would have a similar response. So just before meeting my grandbaby for the first time, I took a sample of my saliva. And then 2 hours later, I did it again. And there was a 63% surge in my oxytocin levels.
63.
And when my husband arrived, even before I gave him a hug, I handed him a tube and I said, "Spit here, sweetheart." And after 2 hours, his oxytocin level was up a little bit. By the second day, after another 2 hours, there was the same changes, the same rise in oxytocin as I had found in the grandmother. So if I am right that by the time brains were starting to get bigger in Homo erectus 2 million years ago, if we were already having to share care and provisioning, if I'm right that this was already going on in Homo erectus, long before humans became the brainiest apes, the smartest apes, we were already the most caring apes. And so my question, Your Holiness, is can we find ways to tap these very ancient potentials for nurture that are there in the human species in order to encourage the powerful to be more caring? And I'm reminded of an intervention recently undertaken in Rio de Janeiro. The police had been told to clear out the favelas. And unfortunately, they were accused of shooting some of the street urchins. And so someone had the idea to send these burly policemen in flak jackets to spend time in daycare centers. And I hope it worked. And so my question is, can we tap, and how do we do it, these ancient potentials in order to make the powerful be more caring? So thank you.
Afterwards, we have some discussions, isn't it?
Yes, we have to.
I think maybe.
Afterwards.
Because I think basically, some occasion, our meeting with scientists, now they they said, through their sort of investigation, experiment, that basic human nature is more compassionate, more caring. The compassion there, care. Care means, I think, the action level, compassion mental level. It's every hour action related with motivation. So compassionate mind, care, take care, automatically come. I think that's quite logical. We are social animals. As I think, as you mentioned, I think at least a few years, our survival entirely depends on others' care. So that's nature, our nature. I think those, some occasion in Hawaii, I sort of request or suggested to some people, they said they are turtle. The turtle usually, you see, the mother come and lay egg, then left. Then the turtles, youngster, they themselves have to fight, have to struggle to survive. No sort of what's the no depend on mother's care. So, if the mother put some mark and keep nearby, and when young turtle hatched, and then put together the mother and the youngster, I don't think any sort of sign of affection each other. That's nature. Their survival not depend on other. In this case, not depend on mother's care. So all this, I think, nature. So we, as you mentioned, is at least even during mother's womb, mother's affectionate mind is very crucial, positive factor. Mother constant fear, anger is a very bad effect to the unborn child. Then after birth, as I think you mentioned, you were correct, the mother's physical touch is a crucial factor, according some scientists once told me. They said next few weeks, mother's physical touch is the crucial factor for proper enlarging their brain. These are biological factors, human nature. So, basic human nature is more compassionate. So that gives us real hope. If we make effort, then there's real hope. If basic human nature is more anger, then no hope. Then I think we should pray for elimination of humanity on this planet. Other hand now, human nature is more compassionate. Now the problem is, as you see another picture, you see children, white, black, play together, live together. So in young age, there's more human nature is more alive. So the children don't care what's a different color, what different religion, what different nationality. When we gradually sort of grow and join education, then we not sufficient sort of effort or information, about the importance of this basic human nature, compassion. So we consider, then I think power in the negative sense is a power, economic power, physical power. Then the basic, then make distinction because of the distinction on the basis of color or the basis of religion and nationality, even same nationality, same faith, they still make distinction, rich and poor, and influential or uninfluential. We always calculate this person, something influential. If I make, because of the friendship with that, I get more gain. The ordinary person don't get. So this, because our existing education system, you see, not pay attention about our inner, deeper value. So through education, you see, not based on religious belief, but simply scientific finding, more compassionate feeling is immense help, you see, to maintain more balanced way element of the physical body. So usually we call healthy mind, healthy body, very close connection. So we take care about a healthy body, not much pay attention about a healthy mind. So that we can do through education, entirely based on scientific finding and our common experience and common sense. Otherwise, you see, human being killing another human being, unthinkable. Really, very sad. And now today's reality, the well-being of each human being, of 7 billion human beings, directly or indirectly, well-being interconnected. East, their future depends on the West. West, similarly, East, and South, North, similar. That is today's reality. Then global warming, natural disaster. As other one you mentioned, population rapidly increasing. When I first came to India as a refugee, then we used to say 6 billion human beings. Now 7 billion human beings. Some experts say end of this century, population of human beings may reach 10 billions. And then still huge gap, rich and poor. So then I think the lifestyle also is changing. So therefore, I think the environment issue also is becoming very, very crucial. So now, time come, not importance of sense of competition, but sense of harmony and work together and share each other. That's the compassion. So we really need for our own survival. Sometimes people consider power is more important than care. That's short-sighted. The lack of holistic. Not like that. So we confronting with a lot of work, a lot of effort. If anyone here really feel now present world situation is okay, and then killing a few hundred there, and a few thousand, and good news, some shocking news, right? If you feel that, then okay. Then this 21st century will be miserable century. A lot of killing, a lot of suffering. And then eventually global warming also then I think creates a lot of because of the disaster. if you feel, oh, present sort of situation is not right, we have to make effort to change that. Then we are part of 7 billion human beings. Each of us have the ability to make some contribution, better world, more compassionate human being. So our goal should be compassionate century. This 21st century should be compassionate century through education. One day, the technology, expert who use technology and the human brain, you see, make more compassionate brain, then these people, you see, must now work, start, expert. I don't think. Unless some portion of our brain remove. They want to say Mandela or something. Mandela, you see, anger, attachment, these usually come. So maybe worthwhile to remove that. then a human being without any feeling. That's also not good. I think much better this sophisticated brain, I think, still there. But then use this sophisticated brain and use reason, factor. What's the use? Too much anger. Immediately destroy your peace or inner peace. I often is telling the beautiful lady, face may be very, very beautiful, but face, angry face, no longer beauty. Isn't it? So the lady's face, not necessarily very beautiful, but smiling and showing affection. Really beautiful, isn't it? So therefore, you see, the compassionate mind really, you see, brings your inner peace, and also, you see, showing peaceful, affectionate face. And that brings trust, conviction. Trust is the basis of friendship. You remain very selfish person. Meantime, want more friend. Illogical. Okay, now too much.
So, Your Holiness, so this is the perfect transition for Johan Rockström, who is one of the leading scientists in the science of environment. And, this is clearly the major challenges of our times, and also the ultimate challenge to compassion, because it's much more difficult to feel compassion and concern for maybe our grandchildren, yes, but in 10 generations or 100 years, we won't be there. So this is a challenge. And Professor Johan Rockström is the executive director of the Stockholm Resilience Centre, which is a famous center for research and environment, and a professor of environmental science at Stockholm University. So now we move to the present and the future generations and the fate of our planet of 8 million species and the fate of humanity, in fact. So Johan, your turn.
Thank you so much. Your Holiness, your call for a compassionate century of collective application of power and care for planet Earth has a very strong scientific support. And I'll now like to give you the updated scientific message of why myself and with the scientific community around the world is getting more and more nervous of our inability to apply power and care for our future on planet Earth. We have built our societies and our economy on the wrong assumption that we are a small world on a big planet. We have built our modern economy on the assumption that we can empty the oceans on fish, that we can deforest, that we can emit greenhouse gases in a planet that can absorb any kind of abuse and that is forgiving and strong always without sending any invoices back, hitting us back as humanity. But science can now clearly show with overwhelming evidence that we have very recently tipped over to a point where we today are a big world on a small planet. We have filled up the entire biophysical space of the planet's capacity to support humanity in the future. We're actually hitting the ceiling where we no longer can exclude major, potentially irreversible and catastrophic impacts that could undermine our ability in the future. And there are three scientific insights that support this story. The first one is that science welcomes humanity to the Anthropocene. Anthros for us humans, that we, 7.2 billion people, now constitute the largest geological force of change on planet Earth. That we, in fact, are such a large force that we today have even entered the 6th mass extinction of species on planet Earth, the first caused by another species. This is not built on assumptions. This is built on observations. And what Your Holiness sees here is a very messy graph, but it's just to show that we have enormous amount of evidence of what has happened on the x-axis, which is from the Industrial Revolution in 1750 in the United Kingdom, all the way till today. And what Your Holiness sees here is perhaps this pattern of very gradual impacts on planet Earth, and then suddenly it kicks off into an exponential rise. And we normally always focus on one of them, which is on the upper left-hand corner on carbon dioxide. But I can share with you that Your Holiness can pick any parameter in the planet that matters for us as humans, from forests to fish to air quality, all the way to the one that makes me most nervous, namely the lower right-hand corner, which is the exponential rise in us killing off other animals and plants on planet Earth. They look the same, this enormous exponential rise of pressures on the planet. Now, what we find as scientists is that planet Earth could actually take this pressure up until roughly 1990. So up until 1990, we saw no dramatic consequences of more greenhouse gases, more deforestation, more overfishing. But from 1990 onwards, only 26 years ago, we started seeing abrupt, massive, catastrophic impacts hitting back. We see Arctic sea ice accelerating its melting. We see collapse in freshwater systems in the US. We see a massive increase in droughts and floods that we had not seen before. We even see parts of Antarctica suddenly tipping over. We saw in 2015, for the first time, collapse of coral reefs at such a large scale with the acceleration of the El Nino caused by also our emission of greenhouse gases. So we are concluding today that we have not only entered a whole new geological epoch, the Anthropocene, where we are in the driving seat, in fact, responsible for the stewardship of creation of our miraculous planet, but also that we see very big risks in this journey. The second insight is that we can now actually identify scientifically the golden age for humanity. We can now tell what's our desired state of planet Earth. Where does she need to be to support us? And this comes from paleoclimatic data of ice cores of fantastic glaciologists around the world. And on this graph, Your Holiness sees on the x-axis the last 100,000 years on planet Earth. It's a wonderful period to choose, not least after the talks of Sarah and Franz, because we have been modern Homo sapiens during this entire period. We were hunters and gatherers, but we were intellectually and physically at the same level that we could actually develop societies as we know them today. On the y-axis, you have temperature variability, which is a good proxy of how it was to live on Earth. And I can tell, Your Holiness, it was a rough time. We had a jumpy journey almost right through this entire period. It's a deep ice age. We had 100 meters of ice above our heads. We had a very jumpy ride. We were hunters and gatherers. We were a few million people until we exit the last ice age and enter what Your Holiness sees in the red circle here, which is the golden age of the Holocene period. Now, the period before,
12,000.
the ice age before is so jumpy, in fact, that over 10 years, the temperature could rise and go down by 10 degrees Celsius. You may see a point at roughly 75,000 years back, which is very cold, where actually it was so cold that fresh water was tied up in the polar regions, sea levels were over 100 meters lower, and genetic paleoclimatic data shows that we were less than 15,000 fertile adult Homo sapiens left on Earth. We were less than 15,000. We were hiding in the Ethiopian highlands, the only place where there was water and food to be found, and we were virtually extinct. This tells us something of how dependent we are on a stable planet. And by the way, it tells us that all of us in this room are very close relatives. Now, we barely enter the Holocene, and we do the most important invention of all inventions during the entire history of humanity on Earth. We go from hunters and gatherers and become farmers. We invent agriculture. And it happens right at the beginning of the Holocene. And we know today that this was not an Hevreka moment with a farmer suddenly say, oh my God, what beautiful idea, let me plant a seed. Oh, no, no, no. We did it on the same moment with rice in Asia, with maize in Latin America, with teff in Ethiopia, thanks to the fact that the planet settled in and became harmonious. Rainy seasons became predictable. You knew every year that you could plant and it would grow and you would harvest. We did not have to take a risk. And we had no mobile phones to talk to each other, so it was simply a proof that this was thanks to the fact that the planet settled in. And it's so fantastic that our latest climatic data shows something remarkable. This is the same graph as the last one. You see the last 20,000 years, and on the y-axis, Your Holiness sees temperature on Earth. You see -3, deep ice age, 100 meters of ice above our heads. We exit the ice age, and then we go into this miraculous Holocene period, and if you look carefully, it's between ±1 degree Celsius. That is what we depend on, and that is the dramatic conclusion of science today, that we depend on a harmonious planet within this Holocene period to support humanity. And now we are hitting the ceiling. We've warmed 1 degree Celsius, and as Your Holiness sees, we're reaching far out of this level. In fact, so much far out that if you take the last 2,000 years, which is the data Your Holiness sees here, look at where we are heading. Bang! We're actually on our way to 3-4 degrees Celsius. Even if we would adopt and implement what we have today as promises in the Paris Agreement for climate change, we would actually go up to 3 degrees Celsius, a place we haven't been in for the last 5 million years. So we're really playing a very dramatic game with planet Earth. And we know that everything we love and everything we care for settles in the Holocene. The coral reefs that are subject and support 250 million coastal communities around the world, the temperate forests, which are massive carbon sinks on planet Earth, the rainforests around the world, the ice sheets that reflect incoming heat to space and keep us safe on planet Earth, and the freshwater systems in the Iguazu Falls. Everything we love, everything we care for locally, settled into the Holocene. So the second insight is that we depend on the Holocene for our future. The third and final insight is that we cannot exclude catastrophic tipping points. We abuse planet Earth, how will she respond? We have major evidence today that planet Earth does not respond in a linear way, but rather in a very abrupt and surprising way. This is the latest data, and again, Your Holiness sees the Holocene period here. We exit the last ice age, we go into the Holocene, and then in gray is the Paris range, that we're aiming to reduce global warming under 2 degrees Celsius. But what Your Holiness sees there, that even at 2 degrees Celsius, in that box on the left-hand side, we know today that coral reefs, furthest to the right, but alpine glaciers, even the Greenland ice sheet, is at risk of irreversibly being lost already at 2 degrees Celsius. So we are at risk of having abrupt tipping points. So this, Your Holiness, leads to, and we simply need to learn that systems like this, the beautiful Svalbard, needs to be permanently white to reflect incoming heat to space and keep the planet cool. It's a cooling system. when it melts, it gets darker, leading to a risk of us warming the planet. It absorbs more heat. This is what we call self-reinforcing global warming. Similarly, with the system that we love and depend on, a beautiful, diverse coral reefs that we today see tipping over and permanently being lost due to the combination of overfishing, nutrient pollution, and climate change. So we know these three insights. And this leads, Your Holiness, to a new equation that actually requires a new compassion for planet Earth. We've entered the Anthropocene. We're now the driving force of planetary change. We are dependent on the Holocene. We need to return to a harmonious level of planet Earth. And finally, we know today that tipping points are real and we cannot exclude them. If we add these together, it requires from us to define planetary boundaries, to define the space within which we can have a good future for humanity on Earth. And science can actually do this today. Scientifically, we have now identified the processes that regulates the stability of the planet and even been able to quantify the levels within which, as long as we stay within them, that we can have in green a safe operating space for humanity where we do not risk catastrophic pushes of the whole planet out of the Holocene, while if we go outside, we risk dramatic change. And that safe operating space gives hope for power and care for the future. Now, we can do a lot with this science. This is how it looked like just 150 years ago with the advent of the Industrial Revolution. We were right in the middle, and we had the safe operating space on our side. Already in the 1950s, though, we had adopted modern agriculture, expanded very rapidly, and as Your Holiness sees, we're already in a very dangerous point on loss of biodiversity because we expanded agriculture today to a point where 50% of the Earth's surface is actually different forms of agriculture. But you see, we're still in the safe operating space for all the other processes that regulates the planet: climate change, water, chemicals, land, biodiversity, forests. 1960s and 70s, we continue developing, but we're still inside the green space. But Your Holiness, look now, the Big Bang comes in 1990. This is the point where we now see evidence of having transgressed the boundaries. We're really outside on climate change, on nutrients, on biodiversity, and as Your Holiness sees, we even went too far on the protective stratospheric ozone layer. And this is the situation today, where we are still outside on all the boundaries, but if Your Holiness looks carefully, the ozone layer was in a very catastrophic danger point in 1990, but we came back in. Why? Because humanity listened to science, and we signed the Montreal Protocol, and we collectively applied power and care, and we came back in and avoided a disaster for humanity by destroying potentially the stratospheric ozone layer that protects us for dangerous UV radiation that could actually kill off large parts of species on Earth. So this is a promising story for humanity. Just to close then, what does all this imply for our future? Well, it implies that we need to transform very rapidly into a fossil fuel-free future for humanity. This is the translation of the climate agreement in Paris, showing for carbon dioxide emissions that we need to bend the curve very rapidly, as Your Holiness sees, and then go down by mid of this century, just in 30, 40 years, into a fossil fuel-free world economy. A dramatic transformation, which has all to do with power and care, and the beauty is that we have so much evidence that we can do it, and that we also can deliver a better, harmonious future for humanity. Now, we have adopted the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. This, science feels, is the promise for humanity's journey to the future. These are aspirational goals to eradicate poverty, eradicate hunger, have a harmonious future for all humanity, and to do that within planetary boundaries. We actually have defined that we need to stay within the planetary boundaries for climate, for water, for biodiversity, and for oceans. My suggestion for these days here, Your Holiness, is that we take these on, but we redesign them. Let us redraw them and make them to a harmonious, caring wedding cake for humanity in the future, where the biosphere is non-negotiable, that we have to stay within the safe operating space of planetary boundaries for our own future. And yes, we want to have aspirational social goals. Yes, we want to use economic development to achieve them, but let's once and for all transition in power and care for planet Earth, not for protecting nature, but for protecting humanity in the future. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Your Holiness.
You also was a presentation. Give us hope. So there is, I think, a real sort of actually the basis of bright future. So keep that in our mind, and accordingly we have to make effort. So in order to carry certain effort, which temporarily sometimes may find it uncomfortable or difficulties, but with help of so-called far-sighted, long-term vision, and holistic, and I think self-confidence. We have this brilliant brain, and I think infinite sort of love, infinite compassion. So combine these two things. I think after sort of after millions of years, then nobody knows. For the time being, of course I'm a monk, no because of children or grandchildren like that. But you see, we can feel comfortable, at least next, I think, few centuries, I think world safe, happy. How wonderful. So, the scientific research truly, they give us the clear picture of reality. Wonderful. So in order to carry realistic effort, we have to know the reality. The reality, in order to know reality, we have to look from the 4 dimension or 6 dimension. From 1 dimension, we can't see the reality. So, the reality, cannot change our wish. So we have to act. So, in order to carry a realistic act, we have to know the reality. So scientific explanation is very, very helpful. Thank you.
So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Your Holiness. I think we have reached within 3 minutes of our time. So I think it was a wonderful morning.
Wonderful. Thank you. Now time comes. You see, as a realistic thinking, now time comes to care our stomach.